Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Iron Man. Yes, it's the beginning of the MCU, the proper MCU. Yes, there were Marvel films before this, obviously. Spider-Man films over at Sony, and the X-Men films over at Fox, and Blade, Universal. I don't know. They're all over the place, and yeah. Uh, this is from 2008. This shirt is from 2007. This is one of the shirts I've been wearing since then. It glows in the dark. Yes, it does. Um, I can't prove it to you, but it does. Still, even after all these years, everybody who went to the panel for this brand new Marvel movie, that it honestly, it could have tanked. It could have been horrible. It could have been just just another superhero film in a dying genre, what they consider a genre, which it's not. But it could have failed horribly. But they knew where to bring their showcase pieces. We got to see the first appearance of Iron Man as he steps out of the cave, and we get to see him suiting up for the first time, and all sorts of stuff. And of course, they gave a T-shirt to everybody who walked into Hall H. So that was kind of neat, and I got to be there pretty much for every Marvel panel since. It's When they did the one for, I guess, Iron Man 3. I was literally sitting on an aisle, and there was a lot of security around me for some reason. They were all along the aisles, and of course, when when you open up a panel for Marvel, it's never a small thing. It's usually a big spectacle, and the music starts playing, and of course, fully decked out in a suit and a gauntlet, none other than Tony Stark. Yes, Robert Downey Jr. comes strutting inches by me. I smelled his cologne as he went from the back of the room, high fiving everybody as he went. Well, okay, he wasn't high fiving everybody. I'm thinking of Scott Bakula at a Star Trek convention, but he was definitely basically just revving everybody up as he strutted his way to the stage. You can find that footage on YouTube somewhere. I was, for some reason, not prepared. I did shoot some, but it was not great footage, so I never bothered uploading it. Anyway, this is the beginning of the MCU. This has, of course, all the seeds of things to come that we know and love about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If you do not know and love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then I'm sure you're skipping this. So I'm not talking to anybody I shouldn't be. It's not like you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I've heard so much about it. Let's go talk to Doug, and Doug will tell us what this is all about. Yeah, you're not here for that, I'm sure. Anyway, stars Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeff Bridges, Terrence Howard, Jon Favreau, who plays Happy Hogan, who also is the director. And man, he was so young and thin, but weren't we all in 2007? Yeah. So, uh, yeah, he plays Happy Hogan. Of course, we've seen him in the Spider-Man films as well, and continuing all the way up to this year or last year's. It just came out on disc and digital, so Spider-Man: No Way Home. He has a part in that. Yeah, he's, by the way, Favreau has been a big part of the Marvel universe for a while. He even appeared as why can't I say his name? Foggy Nelson in the Daredevil movie starring Ben Affleck way back when. Yeah, we try to forget about those. Hopefully, we'll not be seeing any multiverse conflicts where we see Happy and Foggy meeting up. It would be neat, but only so neat. It would be just like, okay, we get it. All the movies are coming together. It counts. Whatever. Anyway, of course, to get an idea of just how old this is, in the first like 2 minutes of the movie, there's a MySpace reference. Yes, MySpace. This is before Facebook was took over the social media world, and Facebook was still something that people had. Um, and usually, Tony is ahead of the game and that kind of thing, but yeah, who could have seen it? And of course, all the phones back then, there was no smartphones. It was all, every time you see Tony using a phone, or Pepper, or anybody else, it's kind of a flip screen kind of thing. There's Verizon and some other branding on it. LG. So yeah. By the way, there's because these were made before. Some of you may not remember this so long ago. These were made before Disney bought Marvel. When this became when this showed that Marvel was a viable studio on its own, they that's when Disney went perked up and went, maybe we should buy this. It's a thing. These films were distributed through Paramount for a time. This, Captain America, the original Thor, and up to sort of the first Avengers film, because they had already purchased Marvel by that point, but they were still under contract to do certain things. They still had their hand in the pot when it came to putting out these films. Not so much after that, but yeah, it's this one is his. It shows his age, but it's aged really well. And honestly, I mean, when you're looking at this story like this, you're looking at the story of, at best, a supervillain origin story, at worst, an ambivalent megalomaniac story that happened to find the right person and under the right circumstances that taught him accountability, responsibility, gave him a conscience, and turned him into a hero, and showed him sacrifice that traveled with him all the way to the very last appearance of Iron Man in Avengers Endgame. If you don't know what happened there, why he's not in the movies anymore, I'm gonna spoil it for you. He dies, and he finishes off his big moment. It echoes a scene in, of course, the very last line in this movie. Not counting the after credit sequence, of course, this is also the first appearance of the after credit sequence thing that all Marvel movies have to do. You can't not have a Marvel movie without an after credit sequence, and this also was something that was special because it was the first seed dropped in what would become the Avengers. Nick Fury showing up and saying, "Hey, you're part of a bigger world. You just don't know it. I want to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative." So yeah, it's kind of a huge thing. Of course, we got Nick Fury from the Ultimates, who was actually styled originally. Nick Fury for many years all the way back to World War II with the Howling Commandos was a white guy. He was a cigar chomping, rough and tumble kind of military guy. When the Avengers was kind of remade for another universe in the comics, they were called the Ultimates, and they were led by Nick Fury that was explicitly styled after Samuel L. Jackson wearing an eye patch. And of course, perfect casting, they bring in Samuel L. Jackson to play him, and has ever since, and will continue to do so, as all the way into the Secret Invasion series that's coming to Disney Plus as well very soon. Not soon enough. We also get the first appearance within the first 5 minutes. We get the first appearance of the Ten Rings, which Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, Legend of the Ten Rings. Come on. So we get all these little things seeded throughout that get paid off, honestly, decades later, long after Tony Stark is gone. Well, not much long after, but after Tony Stark is gone. So we get to see a little bit more about the Ten Rings. We get to learn about the Mandarin and everything else, of course, many years later. Of course, it would also build up, the whole Mandarin story build up even further in Iron Man 3, which we've already seen. The only Iron Man movie we haven't seen so far is Iron Man 2. Of course, I've seen it, but not as part of this whole schlemiel. What else we get to see in this? We just... Of course, unfortunately, we lose Terrence Howard. We get replaced by Don Cheadle. I just hate sometimes having them recasting actors, and for just dumb reasons. It's not that Terrence Howard died or anything. It's just that contract negotiations and things like that. It's just, man, it just sucks. But hey, you know what? Don Cheadle is quite a fine roadie, and I'll take it. So. So yeah, there's we get this. I have had friends who've actually talked to me about this, how they don't actually like Iron Man. I'm like, oh, well, that's up to you. But the point of the character is not that he is a virtuous, heroic, self-sacrificing person from the start. It shows a hero can come from just about anywhere, even someone who is self-centered and self-obsessed and smart ass as Tony Stark is. He everything is a joke to him. Nothing is serious. He deflects anything that's anything serious from his life, whether it's romance, whether it's remembering his family. He still has a sort of a devotion to his father, but also resentment at the same time. That shows throughout the film. Um, we don't get to hear about his mother at this, because obviously he loves his mother, and we saw in Civil War just how much her death affected him. But it's not the kind of thing that um, you know forges most heroes, like Batman or Superman or Spider-Man, like Uncle Ben or Aunt May. In this, I mean, it took Tony Stark to get within an inch of his life, injured by his own machinations, his own weapons that he used to sell to make his billion-dollar, trillion-dollar life. The guy who is just, he's living every dream that somebody can buy with money. And yet he is so very alone at the same time. And while he satisfies his urges wherever he likes, whether it's through drink or women or just building cars, whatever he loves to tinker, he still isn't happy. He isn't satisfied. And he finds that not just in becoming Iron Man, but also in Pepper, who moves from being his beleaguered secretary, or assistant, I should say secretary. Sorry, beleaguered assistant, who we obviously know what her story arc is if you've seen the movies. So yeah, there's a lot of, as much as there's been said about this being almost written off the cuff while they're filming. That's I don't know if it's that movie or Iron Man 2, which kind of also had that same issue and suffered because of it. This still has a very strong growth arc for Tony Stark, and yeah, he's still a jerk. He still plays the self-centered, flippant idiot. Not idiot. He's certainly not an idiot. He's super smart, but he's still very just an a-hole to a lot of people around him at every chance he gets, and even at the end. But his pledge to no longer make weapons after seeing what his weapons do to people, but he still makes a weapon, but only he can have it. Yeah, there's still a little bit of struggle there, and we get to see again how that his obsession with improving his armor, improving the weapon and the defense mechanism he makes, as he does want to make Iron Man into a defensive weapon rather than an offensive weapon. We see that borne out in Avengers: Age of Ultron. So when he makes Ultron. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, we get to hear Jarvis from the very beginning is his AI as part of his home, then eventually part of his armor, and Paul Bettany, perfectly sarcastic. I mean, Iron Man. I mean, Jarvis is sort of created after Tony's personality in a sense, because he's so dry and sarcastic, but British, and. And oh, by the way, if you don't know, in the comics, Jarvis is an actual human being who is like the butler for the Avengers, who actually maintains their mansion in New York City, downtown New York City, and takes care of all the personal things they need in their life, and has taken quite a bit of abuse
through all that process over the years, at least in the early years. He's not around anymore, really. I think he retired. I don't think he died. Read all the comics, so anyway. But he's a very different character, obviously, in these movies. But of course, he grows to become Vision in Age of Ultron, and of course in WandaVision, and just everything's connected. Everything's beautifully connected, and it flows. And I don't think we've had to see them backtrack too much, at least not egregiously, in too much beyond recasting Terrence Howard as Rhodey. But yeah, I mean, there's so many little Easter eggs. Roxxon, which is a big mega corporation that's like kind of like Exxon and Apple and everything else thrown together, every technology and every evil industry you can imagine thrown together in the Marvel universe. That makes an appearance in the background while Tony and Ironmonger are fighting. I keep saying Tony, but again, Tony spends. We don't get to see a ton of Iron Man, which is all right. I mean, it's 40 minutes before we see Iron Man, even the original prototype armor, on screen. We don't see him at all, and that's all right. We're not chomping at the bit. Tony is not boring to watch. Tony is. We wish in many cases, some of us would wish we could be as seemingly in control of our lives, even as it's pretty much a mess. Yeah, it's at any level of financial control. But it's still the idea that Tony is an interesting character. Robert Downey Jr., who honestly was a favorite in the 80s and 90s, and then had a lot of trouble with substance abuse and prison time. Came back from all of that, and was an unlikely choice at first in many people's eyes, but took on the role of Tony Stark because he can handle drama, he can handle humor, and he can be a hero. And he is the flagship character of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Think about this, though. I mean, the X-Men are big, Spider-Man's big, but Marvel had sold off all these characters to stay alive to different studios. The rights to make the movies, they sold off those rights to other studios to make them, and only recently have they been able to get back the X-Men, and they're working with the people at Sony to do Spider-Man on a regular basis, even though their ancillary movies are not great. Morbius. So yeah, it's slowly coming together because people realize, other studios realize, we want to make money too, and why not marry into the proper MCU with some level of intelligent and knowing control, rather than hiring people to make our movies that are kind of familiar with the characters. It's best to put it in Kevin Feige's hands. It's just my opinion. I talked about the. Oh, and one more thing. We also get to see the first appearance of Phil Coulson, who is, of course, what you call it? Why I say his name? Yeah, Clark Gregg, who would go on, of course, to die in the Avengers and then come back in Agents of Shield. So the series, and he's been everywhere since, and he's loved the character, and everybody loves him. So yeah, it's even if the show is not always 100% great, and it's not part of the regular MCU. Oh, by the way, I just realized this. I'm looking right at it. It's going to be awful, but I got this in 2007 at a convention. Yeah, check this out. This literally sits in my living room. It's like a thick poster board. Yeah, isn't that cool? The company was promoting this new movie at this gaming convention, even though it was nothing to do with a video game. They tore down their booth and gave me one, so that's cool. I've had Iron Man in my living room all this time, and I also just bought an Iron Man themed chair. I mean, Iron Man is not necessarily my favorite character, but he's important to the thing I love a lot, which is I love the MCU. And I'm a weird guy to say that out loud, I guess. But deal with it. Better than needlessly hating things. Why spend the energy on that? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I could tell you about this. Anything that's that you want to know or care to know. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Like, share, whatever. And hopefully we'll get more MCU stuff. We only have a handful left. We haven't gone through all of them, but we'll see. Let's pick tomorrow's episode and find out.
606.
606. Not 616, which is the universe number of the proper Marvel Comics universe. Yes, and by the way, I am a Marvel Comics reader. Have been since the 70s. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if this is something that it's a very similar name. We just watched something recently like this, but it might be this might be a duplicate, unfortunately. But we'll see if it is, and it's not on here, or we already saw it. I'll come back and pick another one. But for now, 606 is Winged Seduction, Birds of Paradise. Yeah, we saw something with Birds of Paradise not too long ago. So, Winged Seduction, Birds of Paradise in the next Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that. Love you 3000.